I don't think I'm okay. This is not okay. Why did no one tell me self-awareness could be really bad for you?
As to whether you could ever truly be self-aware to understand yourself all the time, I think I'm no longer a believer. I think that in the beginnings of our relationship, we would have had challenges in terms of you questioning my honesty.
I was a 23-year-old girl. And I got pregnant.
So,
Hi.
why are we doing this, Jay?
Why are we doing what?
Why are we having this conversation?
Why are we doing a podcast, a vodcast, reality needs checking, all of it?
Yes.
See, prior to the topic for this episode on self-awareness, I would have liked to say that I think there's a contribution that we could make to the conversations that are happening in the online space in our world today, and that the amount of benefit that we've derived from having conversations with each other could be of benefit to others. But since this lovely topic that you chose as our first topic on self-awareness, there's this part of me that is wondering, was it arrogant of us to assume that this would benefit anyone and we're just not aware of that because we're so out of touch with what I've learned is external self-awareness, maybe even internal. So there's a part to me that wants to say, we've been together for so long. We're on this journey together. I've now embarked on my PhD. We've moved to New Zealand. We're doing all these things. And, a lot of what we've gained from the experience, a lot of what we've gained in life has come from conversation. So maybe we should let other people in. I don't know, what if this only benefits us and it's not for anyone else? I don't know. What do you think?
If it benefits us, it'll benefit others.
Why is that an assumption? Do you think that's an assumption that you're making?
Well, I don't think that if we have the capacity, I think that if we have the capacity to learn from conversations that we have with each other, then there's a possibility that somebody else.
So we do it for the one. Hope that it's more.
Well, that's what I was about to say. Would have the ability to gain something from these explorations.
Okay. So, fine. Let's say we're doing it for the one. I would say that we're doing this because there might be one person or more out there who is in need of really honest, raw, researched, controversial, facing your darkness and demons levels of conversations. Somebody who believes that if they had more of that in their lives, they would benefit from that. Mm-hmm. And they may have a void, they may not have the right people around them. They may not feel like the conversations go as deep as they would like it to, or touch on areas that they're afraid to speak about with others. But maybe you can observe us speak about these hard things and maybe formulate thoughts of your own. Perhaps some kind of order can come out of the chaos.
I was about to say that. Maybe they just may not have the words to express something that they may within themselves be feeling. And this might be the opportunity to shine some light on that. So,
okay, but why, of all the topics, because we've discussed so many that we would want to explore with this vodcast, why self-awareness? Why did you choose that to be the first one?
Well, I don't know if I will say it as though I premeditated that this should be the first one,
But I did ask you. I did ask to say, what do you want to be the first one? And you paused in your usual guru-like manner and contemplate it for a moment, and then you, with this measure of
gut,
sacred certainty,
all right,
whatever it is, you said self-awareness.
I think in retrospect, I would say that the connecting thoughts were if we are doing a podcast called Reality Needs Check-In, then what better place to start than
checking ourselves,
our own reality.
Yeah.
You know, and the reality that we contend with on a day-to-day. Yeah. So self-awareness is like the closest to home for every person. Their own reality.
Yeah. It is. And I'm not gonna lie, when you said it, there was a part of me that felt like, oh, easy, right? I've been practicing self-awareness for 15, almost 20 years now. I've, granted, it's been an exploration that has had, its low ends, and you grow with time and you dedicate yourself to that journey, that arduous journey up that mountain. But I've been doing this. So putting in some research, reading up some papers, doing this with you, having the discussion, what did you find? What did I find? Pooling our findings as we do for all of the topics that we've ever discussed. Piece of cake, walk in the park. This is going to feel like riding a bicycle. On display perhaps, but riding a bicycle anyway. And then I was devastated. I read the first paper and I came out.
I remember.
To talk to you like, I'm not okay. I don't think I'm okay. This is not okay. Why did no one tell me self-awareness could be really bad for you? That it can destroy your life? Why is there evidence that supports the fact that if you don't know how to do this right, you could drive yourself into a rut of introspection? That introspection could even be bad. Like rumination is its worst cousin. Like, why is no one talking about how terrible self-awareness could be? Why did I not know? Because we have all the media articles, all the things. Have you ever read a single thing that says, guys, just letting you know self-awareness could be really, really bad for you, but so there's a right way to do it and there's a wrong way to, like, have you ever heard any of that rhetoric in popular media? I'm not saying it's not heavily researched, because, oh my God, it is. So many studies, so many papers that have been done on the parts of self-awareness that can lead to depression, that can lead to suicide, that can increase anxiety and stress. It's so, oh my God.
So before we go too far into the rabbit hole of darkness, maybe we should just start with a definition.
What is self-awareness? So, all right. You know what? You're right.
So let's
we're gonna look. Let's go into I don't know, some of the literature. I mean, I'll first start with the first thing I read in that paper that was a bit disconcerting for me, by Sylvia and O'Brien. And they actually referenced, people like Carver and Duval and Sylvia again, that self-awareness is the ability to focus attention on the self as an object. And that was a bit confusing for me initially, because what does that mean, practically speaking, to focus on yourself as an object? And what it meant was that we are having two types of experiences, one of which you master better than I do, and the other of which I master better than you do. Being that you can have an objective experience of life and a subjective experience of life. In the objective experience, you are under, I guess, some sort of consistent self-evaluation, as though you are a separate person from yourself. So let's say there's somebody who comes and works for me, and they, are doing a particular job, and at some point after, let's say 1 year or after their probation, I have to give them an appraisal of how well they've done. What were their strengths, their weaknesses, areas of improvement? Did they pass their probation? that's objective analysis, and it's what we're able to do on ourselves, which is pretty amazing that we can step out of ourselves, evaluate our behaviors and say, this was okay, this wasn't so great, what can I do better? That's objective. Subjective is feeling all your feelings in flow. Something that you do way better than I do, as we both have acknowledged over the years, is you are able to be so present in the experiences that you're having. Not that you can't be objective and not that I can't be subjective, but we have these defaults inside of us.
To lean on one side rather than the other. Yeah?
Why do you think you've leaned on subjective over the years? And I don't know, why do you think I've leaned on objective?
I mean, I think that it may be a byproduct of our personalities.
Okay.
I think that, as you rightfully said, it's a default behavior. So that I wouldn't go as far to say that I could explain it down to a science.
Right.
But I think that that is one of the things that I noticed in you when we just met.
Right.
That your version or the way that you view the world was different from me in that regard.
I defaulted to objective.
Yeah. And I would say that it's something that I learned from as well, because it's not something that I would have seen as a valuable asset.
And vice versa.
Yeah, like I mean, for me, the subjective reality was enough.
Yeah.
And the rest is secondary. You know, it wasn't like as I see it now, and more so from doing the research into this particular topic, that I started to really understand the balance of both sides and the impact that could have on the way that you view the world and the interactions that you have in it. Is very, I mean, as you've already alluded to, this exploration has already been transformative.
Yeah. How much do you think that I was missing in life by not being able to truly and consciously incorporate the subjective experience? What was it like to meet somebody who was consistently self-evaluating into even self-critical and couldn't just let go and be?
What I would say that the first thing that would pop into my mind when I observe that would be that, and you started speaking about it just now when you went into the sphere of describing how easy it is to cross over from the objectivity / rumination into self-criticism. And that was one of the things that I observed in terms of your objectivity leading to you being extra, what I viewed as extra or extremely critical of yourself, more than was warranted from my vantage point. So I would start by saying that as much as objectivity has its value, going too far can lead to you being extremely critical of yourself to the point where it's almost as though you're beating up on yourself.
Yeah.
You know, emotionally, in so many different ways.
And I didn't even know that that was a part of one of the negative effects of misapplied or misused self-awareness. That negative self-effect, there was a term that they used that it reduces your well-being. And it was so... This has been a real disconcerting experience. I would say, though, that in a lot of the types of definitions that have come up on this over time, like there was one that spoke about the conscious knowledge of one's own character, feelings, motives, desires, recognizing one's emotions, thoughts, behaviors, understanding how they align with one's internal standards, these types of things. That's what I know self-awareness to be, yes. Right? You are driven to be as conscious as is possible about what you're doing, why you're doing what you're doing, examining these intentions within yourself, getting clear as to what is driving this behavior, trying to root out the things that are, bad seeds, weeds that will end up being planted in your soil, rooting them out continually. Constant evaluation. But there's a part of me that led to rumination thereafter, right? Where it would not just stop at, okay, this is where it's at. This is the things that I can do better. Let me get on them. I would reach there eventually, right? Which was thankfully, it was eventually productive. But there were a lot of downhill moments for me where I would come to you and be like, oh my gosh, like I discovered something new about myself that is terrible. There's this thing that I didn't know that, why would I do this? And why would I think about life that way? And what is wrong with me? Like, even when I discovered what I did about self-awareness, my first thing was, why wouldn't I know this?
Yeah,
why did I not research this properly? What is that?
Yeah. And that's I don't want to jump ahead, but even in terms of the asking the question why, and the role that plays in terms of stepping beyond the threshold of contemplations into rumination and criticism, so that if you had gotten to the point of asking the question, stopping at the what.
Yes.
As Dr. Urick had said in her book, it would not have gotten to the place of criticizing yourself to the point of why did I not know? I mean, you could not know. You could only know what you know.
I think the best practical example of that was when I was, as you know, writing fiction for the first time. And I was so upset with myself that I didn't know how to write fiction already, which makes no sense because you're learning for the first time. And I was so just ripping into myself at any given opportunity of like, why don't I know this? And why don't I know that? And even worse, when we can talk about that, like when I came to you for critique, I should say, constructive criticism, and you gave it to me, I was livid that you would even critique. And maybe a part of it was because I was already so caught up in my own just self-critique, just having a spiral negatively, feeling so insecure that I didn't know what I didn't know, feeling inadequate, all of these things. And I got caught up in like, why? Why do I even want to do this? Why do I not know these things? Why am I not better at this? Why? And the only time it changed was when I asked the what, as you rightfully said. What can I do to feel more confident about what I'm doing? Oh, I can find a course on this. I can explore what that is. I can learn about pacing through a course, and that switched into solution mode immediately. Oh, I can do this and I can do that. So that you're right, the whys that can be harmful, which is intriguing because that's not how we're taught. We're taught, well, just keep asking why.
To go deeper.
Go deeper.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to take credit for that because I only stumbled upon the why versus what thing in the Insight book. But even going a little further in terms of not negating the importance of asking why, the why is attributed to explorations further in terms of your environment. So why things are the way that they are. That's useful.
Right. Give me an example of that. Like, why is that useful? Why?
So if let's just say you're in a professional working environment, or you're a business owner, and things are not working out. Something isn't working the way that you expected it to work. So that you have certain KPIs and that you're trying to meet, and you have met your KPIs. You don't just stop by okay, what happened? We didn't meet our KPIs. You need to ask why, because this is the only way to be able to make adjustments in terms of future actions. So
then the fallacy, according to Dr. Urick as well, would be that when we apply the why internally, we end up getting a bit stuck.
Yes.
because we go into this criticism of ourselves mode and that rumination, and it's not very solution oriented.
It's not.
And insight oriented.
And to take it a step further, it negates the understanding that we don't know why. And a lot of what we do is unknown to us in terms of the reasons that we make decisions, so that we come up with an answer that we think is the reason, but there's no way to prove that really is the reason. So then there's no real value in what comes out of it. So you go through this process of self-criticism to get to the answer of why, but innately, there's no way to know whether your answer to that question is correct.
I've had a hard time dealing with accepting that there's a part of my consciousness stored in a vault that I could never access. I think that part was the most jarring of the exploration for me, because what do you mean that I've spent the past 15, 20 years exploring myself and I still don't have access to myself?
Well, I mean...
What does that mean? Like... I mean, and it's not that I haven't had great insight over the years and, some not so great introspection experiences as well. But to accept that there's a point beyond which we know nothing of ourselves, that we can't get to the deepest why, because our unconscious is stored in this vault. And thus far, the studies have shown that vault remains inaccessible at its core. That's not you're saying that I can never really know myself?
And so which leads to another one of the questions. Is it even possible to actually be self-aware? That's a realistic question. Now, before we go there though, I want to reverse the question that you asked me about yourself in terms of your ability to be objective and what you would have missed out. Mm-hmm. What would you say to me? Like my leaning on the side of subjectivity and not being mindful of the objective reality in some ways or in many ways. What would I have lost from my experience over that time?
So what it would have felt like to me in those earlier interactions was someone who is avoiding facing the darkness that's within all of us, avoiding facing the mirror that makes us all feel uncomfortable and self-conscious because we see things about ourselves we don't like. Mm-hmm. It felt like... So, and it's odd, right? Because my experience of it with you is that it more felt like you were very self-accepting. Like you knew how to love yourself in a way that had a lot of healthy parts in it. But when it came to facing something that was maybe difficult to accept about your own self-perception, it was difficult to get through. It was difficult to say, hey, I'm having this experience of you. Where's this coming from? And you aren't able to face the facts or the objectiveness of that. Funny enough, the what? You aren't able to say to yourself, okay, these things align with this particular type of what. Mm-hmm. So that if there's certain behaviors that would be, consistent or correlate with what X is, there was resistance. Mm-hmm. Because you were... it's almost like your experience of life went so deep and so high that to come into this reality of the surface of the earth when there's the ocean depths and all of the galaxies thereafter, it felt like it was difficult to get you to ground. And a part of me felt sometimes guilty to even ask that you would, because you thrived in those depths. Like it was clear that you locked into a flow and a peacefulness that was rare.
But okay, and so I think that the point of peacefulness is an important one.
Okay.
Because I would say that is probably one of the things that I've tried to guard the most, my own peace.
Okay.
So that what you're saying resonates.
Do you think you've gone too far in guarding your peace sometimes to the point where you won't let even fact or truth or objective truth, let's say, disrupt it? Is that?
Well, a lot of it was my lack of understanding the importance of others' views of your actions, regardless of your intentions. All right? So that for me, my intentions was of paramount importance.
Give a practical example.
Okay, so in the beginnings of our relationship, we would have had challenges in terms of you questioning my honesty.
Yes.
With you. From my vantage point, I was not telling you the truth because I didn't feel like you would understand. There was so much missing context. And to go there to give you the context necessary for you to understand the scenario, I didn't go there. Whether it be my inability to face it within myself or my feeling as though it wasn't important, whatever the reasons that I would have given myself at that time. So my not wanting to disturb my peace.
And what was your peace in that scenario?
The peace would have been, I guess, not disrupting how I view myself. Like you.
So you don't want to see yourself as dishonest in any way?
No.
Okay.
So
that doesn't resonate with your personhood and your self-perception.
Not just from on that level, from the level of how I am defining what it is to be a dishonest person. Okay. So it wasn't just a situation where the conversation was going down a particular road where the feedback that I was getting was that you're being dishonest to me. The feedback that I was getting is that you are a dishonest person.
Right.
And that
right.
the difference between the two was disconcerting.
Yeah.
So it led to a fair amount of pushback.
I remember.
But then within myself, it's like, well, my intentions are good. So that how you perceive this is secondary to how good my intentions are.
But were your intentions holistically and entirely good?
Now I could say no. I could say that.
But so what is the
difference between now and then?
Yeah.
Well, the difference between now and then is that my intentions are no longer paramount in the processing. So that the intentions matter, but the way that you are perceived also matters.
Right.
And I'm saying that as of recently, that my reasons for being honest is not connected to this processing though, because obviously over time you want to maintain peace in the relationship. You do what you need to do. But now the way that I process and I process my experiences or I process the way that I see the world, the way that I am perceived matters. As to whether I can be aware of the way that I'm perceived is another conversation altogether.
Yeah, it is. So as you speak about intentions versus perceptions, I feel like that is one of the things that we had to learn about self-awareness. And this is like for the first time for me as well, first time for you, which is that internal self-awareness is one facet of self-awareness, which is when I am aware of my own thoughts and feelings and my own actions and how they align with my values and principles and expectations that I hold for myself, and if there's a gap between that and if there's not, and what I'm doing to fix that, and that is in that area. But external self-awareness deals with how we are perceived by others and the gap between that and how we think we're being perceived by others and how we think we're behaving and how we think we're coming across versus what third parties or people from those closest to us to random people who would see us on the street, on social media, which is the new street, what do they think? What are they perceiving? And I think that was the battle that we faced as well in those moments of early dishonesty where I felt like, how are you not seeing this? And you felt like, how are you not seeing me? In terms of, that's clearly not my intention. I am probably fumbling this and going about it the wrong way, but my intention is not ultimately to be a dishonest person. And I'm on the other side saying, well, if you lie and then you lie and then you lie, then that equals what a dishonest person would do. And I'm looking at it very objectively, right? Mm-hmm. And not necessarily able to perceive your intention because I'm not inside of you to even know. Mm-hmm. So I could only go based on, what you would have told me in the earlies. Look at my actions. So I'm looking at the actions and saying, what do these actions imply in terms of a person? If a person is like this, what would they do as their actions? If a person's like that, what kind of actions would they take? So that I think in those moments, oddly enough, I might be asking myself a lot of why questions, but I'm looking outward with a lot of what questions, which is language as when we're now learning. I think the challenge comes in when we resist, which you and I are really good at doing, external self-awareness, because we know ourselves. Ain't nobody on this earth. No, that's the attitude. Mm-hmm. We know ourselves. Ain't nobody on this earth could tell me who I am. And if you want to tell me who I am, you could take that and you could walk. Mm-hmm. I'm not interested. Mm-hmm. Who are you to tell me who I am? You're not living inside of me. You don't know me. You're not in my head. Mm-hmm. How are you supposed to know? And yet, the science, the studies, the research shows that people that don't even know us that well could be better at assessing who we are than we are able to assess ourselves. What?
And worse,
that is disconcerting.
Not just that they have the ability to show you things that you may not have been able, or you're not able to know about yourself, but they may actually be able to highlight things about you that even people closest to you won't be able to tell you about yourself. So that there's a instinct that exists in terms of the way that people interact with each other, that the closer you become to somebody or you get to know somebody, you might actually be blinded.
Increasingly biased in some way or...
Correct. By that understanding, So I think that of everything that came out of this exploration, that was the most disconcerting to me.
That there's external self-awareness.
Not just that there is. Mm-hmm. That part was disconcerting, obviously, because from my vantage point, as you would have already said, my knowing or my understanding of myself, or what I think I know of myself, was enough for me. But if the literature shows and the understanding generally, holistically, is that self-awareness is not just an internal process, but also an understanding of how you perceive externally. If I want to categorize myself as a self-aware person, then I need to open myself up to external understanding how I'm viewed externally. Now, why that is the most disconcerting of all is because it goes right back to this concept of honesty.
How? Tie it for me.
How many times have you found yourself in situations where you may see a particular trait in somebody else, but you would not tell them about it?
You mean especially a negative trait?
Especially a negative trait, which in most scenarios are the things that they may need to hear the most. Now, this is in no way saying that unsolicited feedback is the best way.
Yeah.
The best way.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't even go too far. It's okay. It's the best way
okay.
to treat with
Fair.
somebody else. But I'm sure that you may have found yourself in a situation where, okay, somebody comes to you and they're creative.
Oh boy.
And they come and they say,
I feel like you're targeting something specific.
No, I'm not. I genuinely
Given my
am not.
past job now.
Oh, no. I really didn't go there. I didn't go there. For real. I genuinely didn't mean it, right? What do you think about my song? You know, and it may not have been your cup of tea, but
we don't want to discourage anybody.
Correct.
Yeah.
You see, so that your intentions.
So I find these things that would be like good about it, maybe, or these things that could be worked on. And I have actually phrased things in a way that maybe these things could be worked on a bit, but I can't say that
I've ever said how you felt about it.
Yeah, like I've ever said, man, that was the worst thing I've ever heard. Like I can't, because you know what it is too? There's also a part of me that feels like just because it's not my cup of tea doesn't mean it's not somebody else's cup of tea. But then the counter to that would be, yeah, but then they asked you for your opinion, though. They want to know what you think about it.
So but that point that you're making is a fair point. And maybe the creative arts may not be the best example because art is so subjective, right? But if somebody comes to you from the point of view of not just how you feel about this, but they're asking for technical critique, for example. All right, so that I may have found myself in a situation where there have multiple scenarios I would have found myself in situations where, from working on the radio to doing productions, and somebody comes with a song and they want to know how you feel about it, and I know that there would have been times that I would have avoided sharing how I genuinely feel about it because I feel as though, all right, I don't want to crush your aspirations. But I've tried my best over time to
be more honest.
Well, to be integrous, at least from, okay, so where the radio was concerned, I wouldn't pretend that I like this song to the point where I'll actually play it.
Right.
So at the very least, I would draw a line. Right.
But you would say, keep going, man.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah. You know, that kind of thing. You know, like I wouldn't go out there and say, well, I don't like it. Right. Or I wouldn't go out there and say that it's rubbish. You know, I might say, well, it was okay. It's okay. I would downplay.
Right.
You know?
Okay.
But if I'm being fully honest with myself in this moment, was I being helpful? You know, was I actually helping the person improve on a skill set that they are trying to harness in and of themselves? So that is that the right way? Should I have taken the time to go in a little deeper and articulate how I felt about it in a way that was not destructive? Because that's another part of me that I battle with over time. Like, there were scenarios to counter this part of myself. There were scenarios where I would have been asked for feedback, and I would have given the feedback in a way that was not helpful, you know, and not helpful from the place of trying to tear somebody down, but
just brutally honest.
The honesty,
and the brutal part is emphasized.
Yeah, you know, and that didn't prove to be helpful either, you know. So
I have a question to ask though. How many of those people who may have said that they were looking for feedback were actually looking for encouragement, not feedback? Because I think that's a part of my battle with the honesty around it too, is that sometimes people are looking for reassurance and not necessarily the truth about...
That's a fair question and a fair point, right? As to whether I feel as though I should take responsibility for their lack of understanding for what they're asking for. I don't know if I'll go that far, right? If That's just me being honest.
Yeah.
If you ask for feedback, I'll give you feedback.
Okay.
If you ask me for reassurance, I'll give you reassurance. Like,
so you be clear on what you asking for.
Right? So that's an important caveat. But tying it back to this concept of external self-awareness and the discomfort that came along from understanding how much of a role that plays in holistically viewing yourself as a self-aware person. I don't think that people have the confidence, to be honest, even if you were to ask for feedback.
Okay, fine. I could take that from the point of view of we need to create like safe scenarios or spaces or something where people could ask that. But a part of me thinks as well that okay, so I guess the way I look at it, right? People on social media, when they're ready to rip into you, they will rip. They say everything they have to say. Some people, yes, do use fake profiles to do it. But there are a lot of people who don't, who share whatever they want to share and speak with what would appear to be their honest views or opinions about how they felt or didn't feel about something. And they are brutal to the point of even being unhelpful, discouraging, outright trying to bring somebody down. So-called haters may not even be haters, may just be people who genuinely didn't like something, and just like on Amazon, they give it a 1 star, right? It is what it is. So that there are scenarios under which humans can be pretty honest, so that I feel like it exists. Like there's something. So maybe not in when somebody is closer to you, maybe that makes it a little difficult, because like you've asked me for feedback on things before, and I am somebody who's very encouraging and empowering of the people that I love by nature. It's difficult for me to give negative feedback to you and say, I don't really like this much. This percussion is a little too this. Like, I don't know if so you've had to directly sit me down and say, Jeanelle, do not tell me the good things only. You need to give me things I can work on to apply to the second round of this editing or whatever it might be. And then I would be like, okay, Jeanelle, he's asking for something really specific here. But my first default is to assume people are asking for reassurance. And I don't know what that is, but it is what I think when somebody asks me what they think. That my immediate thing is, you want to be encouraged and reassured, and I'm happy to do that. And if I do tell you that something's not great, I'm probably going to find a sandwich to put in. Now, I want to contrast this, right, to past times that I've been a boss, as in have employees working for me. And I would be brutally honest. And I remember there was once a person who not necessarily worked directly for me, but kind of in a parallel team, who tried to, in an internal meeting with others who were in, on the same level. So it was not, he was trying to embarrass or do anything like that untoward. But he brought up the quality of my emails. And he said to me that you are just sending emails saying, basically, to whom it may concern, these are the things that we have to do today, blah, 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 blah. And why are you not just saying, guys, how are you guys going? I hope you had a great weekend, whatever, whatever. And I'm there like, this is a place of work. This is a place of professionalism. Why would I be putting all this flowery stuff in an email? We are being efficient. We're trying to get the job done. And that shows how far removed my understanding was of human nature. That people don't want to just receive an email first thing Monday morning that says, these are your deliverables, let's go. They want to say, hey, I care about how you're doing. And in person, that was easier for me to do. But when I switched into email mode, I'm like, okay, these things are going on the record. I'm going to keep this super professional. But I feel like I didn't have the awareness to understand that we work much better when we're a bit connected to each other. It doesn't have to be that everybody at work has to be your best friend, but oh my God, care. Could you please care about the fact that people are living real lives and these are real humans, and they might have had a really crappy weekend. And if you want to bring out the best in others, you need to cater for that. And I had to learn that. Like, it took me, I resisted at first. I spit on that advice. I was aware and don't care in those moments, as Dr. Urick calls it, right? Where you are the type of person who's like, yeah, well, but that's just my personality. That's just who I am. You know, you can't tell me anything about that. You should just accept who I am. And I was so anti being open to getting in touch with that emotional intelligence that's so necessary.
But fundamentally, the change came about because somebody was brave enough to give you feedback.
Yes.
And that ties right back to where I think fundamentally the challenge lies for me.
And that's despite knowing that I was as hard-headed and stubborn and resistant to what anybody's external opinions would have been of me.
So be thankful to that person.
I am.
You know, like,
yes.
The most disconcerting part of this for me is that I don't think that people would be honest. I don't think that they will. And maybe I'm being too pessimistic about this, right? Maybe if you ask, people will give you good feedback. Maybe. I could be wrong.
Okay, so let's put it in a category that Dr. Urick spoke about, right? She said, when you are trying to gain external self-awareness, so therefore you're looking for this type of feedback from others to see how far removed are my impressions of myself from somebody else's perception of me. That there were 3 types of people that you come across in these scenarios, right? There was the unloving critics. People who genuinely don't give a about you, all right? Nothing. And that might be a lot of social media people actually, right? People who are just keyboard warriors with, who are just there. They're unloving critics, meaning that they have no buy-in and no real love for you, and nor do they have your best interests at heart. And she defined that as being people who have your best interests at heart, right? They don't have your best interests at heart. They're just saying what they want to say. Okay. But then there's the other extreme of it, where it's the uncritical lovers. People who really love you, but they will never criticize you. They will never tell you the truth. And her view was that who you're looking for, the right person to look for this feedback from, is a loving critic. So they're bought into you. They have your best interests at heart, but they also have the ability to criticize, to critique. Criticize feels like the negative, right? They have the ability to constructively criticize or critique whatever you're coming to them to. And she put in the caveat that this needs to be really specific. Like what you're coming to somebody with. Like if I go to somebody who's never worked with me before, right? A friend of mine who's known me in the capacity of, really encouraged me in X, Y, Z, and you've never been a subordinate of mine. And I go to you and be like, so what kind of boss do you think I am? And you say, oh my God, you make such an amazing boss, because based on the experience of me as a person, I'm such a great friend and I'm encouraging and whatever it might be. But you've never worked under me. So I would be going to the wrong person, even if it's a loving critic, to find feedback, just so perhaps I could echo chamber my own perceptions of myself, rather than going to the source, the people who could really say, well, I've worked under you and, this could have been better.
I mean, if you have somebody that they could go to who doesn't work under you anymore and they have nothing to lose, all right, maybe they might be honest.
Yeah, but there must be a level of mutual trust. That was the other thing that she spoke about.
Right.
There must have that mutual trust between both parties. And
I think that, this was something we were speaking about earlier. I think that concept of trust, I think trust is at an all-time low holistically.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Between people. So that to find the people that would give you the feedback. Like, you have no idea how much I have thought about this since, because I don't know if I have no idea how people
perceive you.
You
have some feedback. People have said things
I wouldn't go as far to say
to me, and I'll tell you what they say.
But I wouldn't go as far to say I have no idea how people perceive me, right? But I have no idea if the way that they say that they perceive me is all that they perceive. Right?
Okay, if they're willing to tell you the negative. So you think okay.
You know, so, and I mean, I always, this is one of the things that I brought up with you. Like, I don't need you to tell me the good things about a song I might send you.
Right.
I already know the good things.
Wow.
You know, no, like,
but fair.
I want for you to tell me things you don't like, because I wouldn't see, like, I wouldn't see the things that that are not likable. I wouldn't see it.
Be a loving critic, basically. But, you know, another feature that she did speak about of loving critics, if you're looking for them, is they have to have the ability to actually be brutally honest. And not everyone has that. So that you have to look for the people who are capable, because if you have somebody who is what is it, an uncritical lover, no amount of love that they have for you is going to get them to reach a space where they could genuinely criticize you. Like, I would see that as like I don't think your mom could ever be a loving critic because she loves you. And it's not that I think she would hold you on some unrealistic pedestal, but I think that it is just so much love, so that I feel like when the love eclipses everything else, it's difficult to see. Like, as you said, like, I would be biased towards you, and I know that. There's a part of me that there's nothing that you don't do that I don't see as, you know, it's just, it is difficult for even me who's living with you, who would see the things that are, you know, probably worthy of some measure of improvement. It is difficult for me to go there in the early days of our relationship. Sure, we weren't too invested. We didn't have that much buy-in. But after you get to know somebody and you've interwoven your life with them on so many levels, and you know their intentions and you see how pure it is, and I'm going to come and be like, yeah, but that wasn't great. Oh my God.
Yeah, no, I get this, and I get the way that I get the way that makes sense.
Right.
Right?
But it's not useful.
It's
for
not.
You.
So when the question, tying back to the question of whether it is actually possible to be self-aware, completely, holistically, internal self-awareness, external self-awareness, I have questions. Now I have questions. Now I have real questions as to whether it's possible. And the questions arise from my inability to be in complete control of whether I am self-aware. So that the control of whether self-awareness is possible for me doesn't solely lie in my hands. That is the reality. And because that is the case, now I feel I can't confidently say that I'm self-aware. I can't.
Yeah.
And that's disconcerting.
And is this only in the external self-awareness part? Like, do you feel that you are internally self-aware versus externally? How does this work for you?
Now, all right. That's a good question. Where I already laid out my concerns about the external self-awareness part, so that I don't need to go back into that part. Where the internal self-awareness part is concerned, though, the understanding that you don't actually have access to your unconscious thoughts adds a layer of discomfort to me as well, all right? So now, I live in this reality where I can only be aware of so much. Because there's so much that I am not able to be aware of. Like, what?
You know, one of the things that threw me off as well was when she talked about the fact that journaling could be really harmful. Harmful is the wrong word, but it could end up having no benefit in the way that we've all been told that journaling is the best thing you can do for self-awareness. You need to journal. And the research has shown that even journaling too often can get in the way of real progress. It would not end up being a helpful tool for us.
And I mean, to put that into context, a lot of that was connected or is connected to this crossover from self-evaluation into rumination into self-criticism thing, you know, so that if you have something to work through and you use journaling as a tool, that's fine.
And she talks about it being expressive writing, right? Where you incorporate
correct.
both thought and feeling. Fact, so you're objective, but you're also talking about what you're feeling about correct. It as well. And you are, it's a very expressive
and a specific
writing.
It's targeted it's used to target a specific contemplation, as opposed to if you make it a habit of doing it every day, for example, you might get up one day and be looking for something to write about.
Yeah.
You know, so it's almost as though I was looking at a video from Mark Manson at a point in time, and he was speaking about the negatives of consistent therapy.
Right.
And his mindset was his explanation or his critique of consistent therapy was connected to, okay, you go to a therapist to deal with a specific issue, and that issue is dealt with, and you continue to go because you don't want to break the habit of going, but now you're trying to find things.
Right. So we can hallucinate things into being.
And that's actually what it leads to. And it actually leads to and he explained that there was a period of time in the 80s where psychologists had to go through the procedure of restoring their reputation, because it was found that they were actually planting seeds subconsciously.
So planting problems in people.
Into people.
So then maybe therapy is a form of introspection. Now, I guess what I didn't know is another thing, right? When I see myself as a master of introspection, and maybe I am, which is why it's led to problems in the past of rumination and self-criticism and even biases towards how I might view things versus how they really are, because I've sold myself a story of a why. I went searching for a why, but I found something that seems to fit into the why, and then I apply it to my life, and I have created even issues where there may not have been issues for myself, just like somebody would in therapy. Like, things like that can happen. I would say over the years I've also done a lot of whats. I have been very solution oriented, so I think I'm probably a mix of both. But now that I can differentiate between them, and maybe it's important to discuss what's the difference between them. So,
the difference between what?
Introspection and insight.
Okay.
So with introspection, let's say I get an appraisal at work, and the appraisal speaks to the same thing, the same areas you could improve on, the things that you should do better. My score might be average. I might have assessed myself, which studies have shown we actually have a very inflated view of ourselves. So we humans will score ourselves a lot better than we usually are, one. And two, oddly enough, the studies have also shown that we tend to score ourselves, the biggest disparity tends to be where we score ourselves the highest, and that disparity is in our weakest areas. Yeah. So that there may be some measure, I don't know if it's because of insecurity or what, but or inadequacy, or where we, it can swing the ego in the opposite direction in some way, but we tend to inflate those views of ourselves in some way. So with introspection, let's say I had this view of myself, because in normal work appraisals, you actually score yourself and then your boss scores you, and you see the difference between those two, right? Which is very disconcerting if it is that it's in the opposite direction.
So that's a normal thing.
Yes, yeah. I give myself a bunch of 5s out of 5s for something, and my boss is like 1 or 2 or whatever. Let's say that's the scenario you're in. This, of course, is immediately, you've gotten feedback. This is external self-awareness. You're jarred by this. You now sit with yourself. An introspection approach would be, I ruminate on this a whole lot, right? I self-criticize myself. I say, where did I go wrong? What is wrong with me as a person? And I start to find things to stab myself with. Like, I get stuck in a loop. I get depressed. I become unmotivated at work. I start to drag my feet. I'm resentful. These people don't understand me. I find other people to blame. I blame myself at night. I can't sleep. I wake up. I feel embarrassed when I see my boss. Like, that there is the results of introspection. insight, if I had taken an insight approach, would have been that I start with these results, note they don't feel good under any scenario. There's no circumstance under which this is supposed to feel good that, I've received terrible criticism and now I'm here feeling amazing as a result. You could expect to feel bad both ways, right? And so this is not that one process takes away that this kind of feels pretty bad for me. This doesn't feel great. But okay, I sit with those emotions. This doesn't feel great. What can I do to improve on these areas? Let me get into solution mode. Like I want to see that the next time I'm evaluated, a year from now, 6 months from now, whenever it is, that this is improved in some way. What can I do? What can I do better? And let me find those things. Let me make them actionable and let me work on them day by day, week by week, month by month. Let me set a plan. Let me make sure and take off those goals, because I don't want to stay in this place. I don't want to stay stuck in this evaluation, or I want to improve. And insight pushes solutions. It pushes how do I improve on myself? What do I have to do to be better?
Okay, but is the difference between insight and introspection, is that like a personality thing, or is it
I don't know.
Does it start from where you at on your journey of self-awareness? Like where does that originate?
I think it's for example, now that I know that there are two different ways to do this, because I didn't even know there was a differentiation between introspection and insight. I thought that at the end of introspection, you get insights. Like this was my thinking going into this self-awareness study, when I was like, oh, I'm great at this. This is going to be a walk in the park. And then it wasn't, which is, again, lacking self-awareness of how much I didn't even know, which is amazing, right? And so that knowledge gap was definitely there, and I didn't even know that. I had a moment where I could have felt like, oh, I'm inadequate. There's no way we should do our first topic on this, because I thought I was speaking about this from a place of mastery of self-awareness, but I know nothing. And therefore, I shouldn't even try to do this vlog. You know what? We shouldn't even do reality needs check-in. Nobody should even listen to what I have to say, because I didn't know anything and I'm a terrible human being and whatever else, right? That would have happened if I introspected. Like it would have went into a loop of feeling inadequate. But the insight for me was, okay, if I didn't know this, as somebody who has done personality tests, we should talk about that, right? Who's done all these things, made everyone in my life do personality tests that I'm doing. Hey, if you're my friend, take a personality test. You need to do this. I will find out what your Myers-Briggs is, find out what your Big Five is. Let's go, right? As somebody who's done this on all these levels, oh my gosh, I didn't know all these other things. And if somebody who has prided myself on putting in work into self-awareness, didn't know that self-awareness used wrongly could lead to terrible things in my life, then maybe the average person out there doesn't know this. And maybe this is worth sharing, even if I now feel like a newbie to this knowledge. And that was the result of an insight-based exploration. That's the reason why we're here right now. Otherwise, we wouldn't even be able to go here. I mean, credibility is an interesting thing, right? How do we feel when we introspect versus gain insight into credibility? I think when we introspect, we feel inadequate. But when we gain insight, we say, okay, what can I do to become more credible? I can go and read and do these things. I mean, we went through books and papers and whatever else to reach this place to be able to even discuss this topic, something that took us way more than we thought it would in the exploration of it, but we knew it was of value.
And I think that one of the things that, like going back to this, this concept of an indicator of someone's ability being connected to how capable they see themselves as being. I think that the converse is also true, meaning that people who feel least capable in some scenarios end up being the ones that know a lot more. And one of the things that I felt from this exploration was, and I'm sure it's evident in the things that I'm saying, how much I don't know.
Yeah.
And the I guess the deeper that you go into any particular topic and understanding the nuances associated with the depth of or the complexity of that particular topic, it just opens up this world of, wow, I now feel like I know less than when I started. And it's not that you know less, you know more, but you know also by knowing more, you know how much more you don't know.
Yeah.
All right, so that you considered yourself to be
prior to this
a self-awareness expert.
No, that's far. Definitely
right. Okay,
didn't.
So
Yeah.
what would be a fair categorization?
I felt like this is something I worked on every day, genuinely. I worked on looking back at my day and feeling like, okay, how well did I do today? Why did I not do X? And why? I mean, there's a lot of whys, but then what am I going to do tomorrow differently would also kind of be in there, which is what self-awareness is, now that we understand it as well, internal self-awareness. But I guess I felt like I practice this daily. You know, like it's like somebody who might be super fit because they go and train in the gym like every single week and they don't miss a week. That's how I felt. Like I felt like I was fit.
So where did that come from? Because that is not normal.
Oh, fine, but okay. So I was a 23-year-old girl.
Wow.
And I got pregnant with my son, Alexander. And in the journey of deciding that, okay, I guess I'm gonna be a mom, you know, by the time I turn 24, I am aware, you know, I loved reading on these things, scientific things in some version or form. I'm aware that my prefrontal cortex isn't fully defined yet, and that's a problem.
So at 24 years old,
23
years old, you are aware that your prefrontal cortex has not fully developed.
Well, not that I'm aware in terms of I'm feeling this lack of development, right? I read that somewhere and felt like, oh, wow, okay, I guess I have to wait until I'm 25 for life to...
23.
It's called Scientific American and all these different...
Oh, yeah.
Since I was a teen, like pop science and things. Like, oh, for sure, right?
That's very normal. Very, very
It is normal. It was normal in my little circles. But whatever. The point is that I knew this, but it didn't matter as much to me until I found out I was pregnant. At which point I'm like, but I don't even know if I really know myself. How am I supposed to raise a kid if I don't even know who I am? How am I supposed to help them figure out who they are? Like I went through this moment of deep inadequacy. At which point, thankfully, it switched into some kind of insight-driven, you know, now that I have the language for it, direction. And the direction was, maybe I can do a personality test. Maybe I could, you know, figure that out. And I started to Google, you know, personality tests that seemed popular. And I stumbled across the Myers-Briggs personality test, which is probably the one I've made the most amount of people in my life take, much of their annoyance sometimes. But in those years, finding this tool that not only explained to me who I was and made things make sense as, oh my gosh, oh yes, I do this. Oh wow, I do that too. Oh my God, this is actually who I am in that moment. Granted, there are a lot of inadequacies even within the Myers-Briggs itself. But in that moment, it was the first time I had come face to face with an external assessment that helped me make sense even to myself and then to others. And one of the things in that time, my assessment was that I was an INTJ, which goes very well with why I was seeing life very objectively, and I would default to that position because my brain was just wired in its logic forms and it just defaulted to that, and it was safe, right? It didn't want to deal with emotions. And one of the weaknesses of that personality type was a lack of emotional intelligence. It was not just about it being something that, you know, you could just go and learn and you'll be fine. it was that we had a particular distaste and almost arrogance around people who gave into the whims and feelings of life without having this clear, logical view as to why you're doing it on a rational, and you look down on it, and it's almost like the engineer versus the musician inside of me. You know, one is gonna look down on the other and be like, yeah, you're there with your airy-fairy reasoning, but I know, right? I have facts to prove X, Y, Z, and it was true, right? But when I read it, I remember thinking to myself, no, but I have my emotions and I feel my feelings and I know what it is to love and to lose and to cry and these things, you know. Granted, I would get myself out of it in 2 seconds because I'd look down on those feelings, but it was there. And then I remember the experience of sending my result to people around me, right? To try and get them to be like, read mine and then do yours and tell me what you are. So if you read mine, you'd see, you know, it's pretty similar to me. And then you'd be like, oh, that's why she does the things that she would do. And maybe it will help the relationships a little bit, because I felt what it was like to be misunderstood. And the INTJs weren't just a rare personality type, but women within them were especially rare. You know, it was not often that somebody would come across a woman with this personality type. And if you have a woman within a particular box in your head as to how they should behave and the things that should move them and make them feel alive, and you come across me, it's probably not going to connect the same way. What was disconcerting was when people who in my life at the time agreed so fervently with my result that it occurred to me that they were also agreeing with the bad things about me, the weaknesses. And I felt like, but I thought they would say, you know, yeah, the good things and the strengths about you are so true, but you don't have those kind of weaknesses. Like I felt like, you know, yeah, I know. I had such a inflated self-perception. Mm-hmm. I was so convinced that as much as these weaknesses exist in the other INTJs,
I do exist in you.
No, because I'm great, right? I'm good. And a lot of that was how deeply inadequate I was already feeling, becoming a mother out of wedlock, and soon within like 4 months of my kid being born, I was a single mom. And you want to hold on to something that says, yeah, but you're just strange, but you're great. Yeah, you're a little, you know, bit of an outlier on this side of things with the personality types for women and even people, but you're awesome. And what I instead got was a resounding sort of agreement with my weaknesses.
Well, so notwithstanding the shock,
right,
that you would have experienced from that experience.
Yeah.
It still gave you at the very least a framework.
A framework, yes.
You know, to be able to describe to yourself about yourself, but also for you to get an understanding of the way that others perceive you, even if only by their agreement to, or they're agreeing to the findings.
Yes.
To the findings being accurate.
And I think it also helped me feel less or a little more confident in meeting new people who I knew would be likely to misunderstand who I was and what my motivations were like, and what made me feel the things I felt inside. Because now I had a link to send that would just be context.
So and that's valuable.
Yeah.
So that maybe.
Well, what was it like for you when I sent you the link about me, and then with the expressed desire that you would also do it? Do this test.
I would say that
within like a week of us.
The one challenging part with those tests for me is that the results are so long, all right? In terms of having to read, like they give you a full
This is how you are
report.
In relationships and in work and in career and with friends.
I don't even know if I ever made it through the entire thing. No, gosh. I mean, I read it, but I mean, like with the level of depth
Right.
To understand all the nuances.
To introspect, to gain insight from it that you could then action in your own life.
I don't know if I made it through the whole thing.
Right.
Like, I understood it conceptually, and I guess that's fundamentally what matters.
But did it help you understand me?
It did, right? It did, at the very least, it gave me a language to be able to, a common language for us to be able to share, which is the point I was going to make, that maybe to counter this discomfort in the short term of not being able to get feedback that I think is a full representation of the spectrum of the way that somebody else may perceive me. Maybe these are tools that can be used in the interim, you know?
Well,
somewhat.
There's a catch, right? Mm-hmm. I remember one of the things that I read about, like a sort of requirement. I can't remember which site said it or one of those that gave the free test to do it. A great one is actually 16personalities.com if anyone's interested. But and that's for Myers-Briggs, which is not the only one. The Big Five is probably a really great evolved one to take. But one of the things that they said was answer as you act and not as you think you are.
I remember you told me that.
Yeah, and I told everyone that.
And that's hard.
But I felt like it was the best chance that you're going to have to be honest. Because as you're right, this whole discussion has been about the fact that we don't really know ourselves as well as we think we do. And sometimes I think the only real way to assess it would be, how do I behave? So, for example, I remember when I was first doing the test, reading about a trait that had to do with, like, do you work in spurts or do you work consistently? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I remember thinking to myself, like, I am a focused person. I work consistently. And having to stop and ask myself, I said, well, when is the last time that I've worked consistently? Like every day, the same amount every day. And I understood from looking at how I acted versus how I wanted to be or how I wanted to perceive myself or what I wanted others to think of me, that my energy is actually better in spirits. And, it's something that we've come to call like my dragon's breath, right? I believe in taking these massive inhalations and then I exhale. I mean, it happens on a weekly basis, which could be seen as consistently every week, every couple of weeks, there are these massive exhalations that I do. But in reality, I will not work the same way every single day. I will instead not ruminate. Ruminate is the wrong word.
Please.
But there is some rumination that has taken place, but there is this background processing. I read some things, I research some things, I do this thing, and I just let it marinate. Because by the time I sit down to do that work, it is pure fire. Like it is the dragon's breath. Like it's the inhalation leads to this massive outpouring of fire. And I'm able to just pull all these thoughts together and all these connecting dots that I've been Googling here and looking. So it's not that it's like an active rest. It's not even that it's passive at all. Mm-hmm. But the reality is, in black and white, that is what it is to work in spirits. Because I'm not getting up every day, working the same amount every single day and then stopping and then doing it again tomorrow. I'm working in different ways, and it's different.
But at the very least, so notwithstanding that there are limitations in terms of the results that you can get, right? And I'm not in disagreement with that as a reality. Mm-hmm. But going back to the part where there's a level of discomfort around understanding that the only way that I could really attain self-awareness is not only to have inner self-awareness, but to have external self-awareness. And there being a limitation in terms of the source of external self-awareness being dependent on the honesty of another, then at the very least, I could take back some of that power through a test like this, because now it's on me to be honest. The integrity now falls on me in terms of my ability to do as you just said, that to answer the questions from the place of where you're at and not where you would want to be, so that you can get the most accurate results.
And the only way to know where you're at is to answer based on your most recent actions and not where you're at, where you think you're at in your mind. So for example, back then, as you spoke about, you saw yourself as in our earlies, a very honest person. So if a question came up and says, do you think you're brutally honest? Yes or no? You'd have put yes, because that was even something you would have said to me, like a brutally honest person, etc., etc. But the truth would have been that you are brutally honest under certain circumstances. And that is a nuance for all of us, right? We're talking about the fact that I can't even give you the kind of critical feedback that you would require of me. Am I being an honest person if you ask me, what do you think of this? And I am like, well, it's amazing. And it's not that I don't think it is, but I'm not willing to say the things I think can be improved. Even though I expect that from you, which is interesting, right? Because I expect you to tell me the very, very truth at its core. If I give you, like I did with writing my first books, what do you think of this? And you didn't tell me the truth, I would have been upset with you. So that...
I told you the truth and you were upset with me.
I wasn't just upset, I was livid. I decided within my ego that who are you to tell me anything, even though I asked you to do these things and you spending your time reading over my manuscripts, and I'm like, oh my God, you're a horrible human being. You don't see me, you don't understand. And, listening to you led me to my first book award. So here we are today. But the point being that I don't know how capable we always are of being honest about the way we're acting, because our intentions can be very pure, even when our actions can be different.
So I understand this is
complex.
It's ridiculously complex, right?
Right.
So what I'm trying to get at is, in the absence of, or in the process of accepting the complexity of this situation, even if it's a short-term solution, can I depend on the results of a test that is reputable enough, like Myers-Briggs / Big Five personality, etc., that not only gives you the categorization of your positive traits if you fall into this particular framework, but it also gives you the negative traits.
Right.
So that you could...
Weaknesses, I would say.
Strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah.
So that now I could look at this and at least give me something to work on, because if we're accepting that we're not in a place, realistically speaking, where we can easily get honest feedback from the people around us, and I want to even disconnect the people closest to us and give the understanding that they may have their own biases just as we do of ourselves, right? Is that a short-term solution? Is that something that people who listening to this...
I think it's a place to start.
It is.
It is a place. It was incredibly useful as a tool, and I would say I did pass through the phases of defensiveness to begin with, right? Where first I'm just like in denial that these things are really bad things are me. I would take all the good things, right? Like, yeah, tell me those great things, but these bad things over here, like, I'm not as like that. Those are other INTJ weaknesses, right? Then I went into the phase that Dr. Urick talked about, where you're aware but don't care. And that's not a phase that she referred to. She actually referred to that as a type of person who actually is aware but doesn't care about what they are, so that they come across, let's say they're abusive and shout at their employees all the time or whatever it might be. They know and they're aware that they're even trying to instill fear into people, and they don't care. Like, they don't care that this is affecting people negatively. This is who I am, right? But for me, there was a phase of that. There was a phase, like, even when my old coworker was telling me, your emails come across a bit black and white. Like, there's no flowers in them. There's no like, oh, I'm looking forward to receiving an email from this person. There's just, oh my God, work is coming once you see my name pop up kind of vibe. I was in my aware and don't care phase. Like, yeah, well, that's who I am. This is what makes me great. My ability to not do those things and focus on these things makes me super efficient, which it did, but at what cost? Then came you in my life. And one of the first things you pointed out to me, and I remember the word you used, and it was a word that triggered me for probably a year or two in the earlies: patching. He said, I patched my emotions. I put plasters over things and I refused to feel my feelings. Mm-hmm. And I was so offended. Like, excuse me? I feel feelings. I love you. Like, what are you talking about? Oh, I feel sad when this happens. Oh, I feel hurt. And I whatever. Like, what are you even saying? I don't patch anything. I don't patch things. And what was the book that you got me?
The Emotional Intelligence.
You got me a book on emotional intelligence. Mm-hmm. You sent it to me as a Kindle gift. Mm-hmm. You didn't even say anything. I just got a boop notification in my Gmail, as was your custom, right? You like to send books to people in that phase of your life as gifts, you know? So you get this Kindle gift from Kevin, and you're like, oh, this is so nice. And then I click, and the topic is emotional intelligence. And I'm like, this so-and-so is so gung-ho that I am patching. So I remember, with a lot of things, I remember going on defensive, I don't care in all those phases, right? But sometimes I would have probably read things from you with the intention to prove you wrong. Mm-hmm. To be like, look, see this written here? That's not me, right? Mm-hmm. I did this the other day, and I did and I have all these different reasons why you're not right, mm-hmm. because the evidence proves otherwise, right? Very factual. And I read the book, and I felt so deeply ashamed. Mm. And I said, oh my God, I lack emotional intelligence on so many levels. A lot of what was going on with me is that I'd been through some really painful mm-hmm. and traumatic experiences in my life. And the only way through it to remain productive and focused and go after your degrees and be successful in your jobs and whatever else was to not allow those feelings to catch me. Hmm. Like I had to keep running from them, and staying ahead meant you're not going to sit with this. You're not going to feel your feelings. And therefore, you're not going to find really great insights that you can use to improve your life and become, emotionally aware and intelligent so that you can have even better relationships and connections with human beings who are worthy of it. And that book helped me understand how much I was missing in my life. And we should link that book as well. Mm-hmm. So that beyond this point, probably I think it was a year or two after that. So after I got out of my aware don't care phase and all of the things and came face to face with the mirror, I gained valuable insights, because some of the things in the book were, I think they were actionable in nature, or at least led in a particular direction. I did another Myers-Briggs test. And of course, this is after years of doing these tests and always being INTJ. I did it every year coming up to my birthday, I think it was. Mm-hmm. Just to see, had I changed over the past year in some way, because we're malleable as human beings to some extent, and just wanted to see what would happen. And I was always strongly INTJ in nature. And for the first time in my life, and probably doing it for so many years, I was now an INFJ. And I was livid again. Mm-hmm. Because I was like, this so-and-so made me into a feeler, and I'm upset. I'm a thinker, right? That's not how the tests work exactly, right? But to see that F there after all those years, I remember even messaging an acquaintance of mine and saying, oh my God, like, I can't believe I've changed so much, and what has he done to me? And her reaction being like, why are you even having a bad reaction to this? This is probably good for you. And she probably has suffered at my at my TJing for so long that she was probably relieved. But, I did reach a place of change, and it was measurable change.
But did you, in that process of, between the time of reading that book to doing that test, did you feel as though a change happened before you got the results?
What it felt like and what I expected to see was that, I just felt like I was working on the weak parts of an INTJ, and I wasn't, this was fine. I was working on that, but I'd always be INTJ. And of course, some parts of me would be we're mixtures of things, right? It's not one thing or the other. It's measures of ratios between one versus the other, and where we operate from, and internal and external. But with that in particular, I did feel like I would still be an INTJ, but like my percentages would be more balanced in a way.
Right.
I didn't expect a tip. So it was, I guess, a testament to how much work I put into myself during that time. Because I got in touch even with my creative side. I got in touch with music. Like I really got back into all of the dimensions of who I was. I no longer muted parts of me. I started that journey to feel my feelings in constructive ways, and from it to allow creations to flow while still being my objective technical self, but now incorporating subjective experiences. And the one thing I would say when music creation is concerned, the songs that we've done, all the things that we do, where writing fantasy is concerned and all those things, I can only write those things from a subjective place. I have to be in flow. Like when I'm writing fantasy, I am there in those worlds. I am having the experience of my protagonist like it's myself. I go to bed wailing if it is that something happens to one of them. Like you've seen me sob like a baby, being so in flow with the experience, something that I don't know that I would have been able to do if you hadn't brought that out in me, if you hadn't pointed it out with honesty.
So there you go. You know, and this, I think that this ties the entire thing together seamlessly.
Yeah.
Because without the external commentary, it's difficult for you to see the gaps. And I guess they're called blind spots for a reason.
They are.
You know, as to whether the blind spots are meant to be blind spots is another conversation for another day. But at the very least, I guess a basic takeaway from this could be at least start with a personality test.
Yeah.
To get
Big Five, Myers-Briggs, something.
Get a sense of...
These things are free to do. We will link everything.
Yeah, get a sense of where you're at on that spectrum, so that at least you could start understanding yourself. As to whether you could ever truly be self-aware to understand yourself all the time, I think I'm no longer a believer. I think that is an ongoing journey. You could try to remain as aware as is possible, but to say that self-awareness is a goal, like I don't see
that's
it
what
as
I want to know.
Yeah, I don't see it as an attainable goal. I see it as a...
But wouldn't that make anyone decide not to pursue it if I can't attain it?
No.
So
let me conclude the holistic thought.
Okay, sorry.
It's not just to say that it's like one of those things that there's no full stop. Like there's no end.
So there's no destination.
Correct.
Self-awareness is an infinite journey.
There you go.
Okay.
Couldn't have said it better.
Okay.
So it's an ongoing journey, but there's no end.
Right.
So
don't look for some arrival point that you attain it and you're like, well, I am now a self-aware person. Instead, commit to the journey of ongoing, brutal, and with loving critic, self-awareness. In other words, and I think the best way to describe a loving critic would be to find the harmony to your melodies. Meaning, if I've written a song and I want to find, let's say my song is about me, and I want somebody else to be a part of that in some way, to give me feedback on this in some way, let them be harmonizers to your reality. In other words, people who can see who you are. Anything else, anything coming from anyone else is noise, is dissonance. So imagine what it is to have off-key notes come in and trying to blend with your music. It doesn't work.
Right.
So that the people, your loving critics, will harmonize with you in some way.
Yeah, I think could not have said it better.
All right.